Jason Unruhe for us as well, political commentator out of Niagara Falls, Ontario, via Skype, a regular contributor to Press TV. Thank you very much, Mr. Unruhe, for joining Press TV. On the recent developments, I'd like you to come in and give us your reaction, your thoughts, please.
Well, there's one phrase that comes to mind after listening to your other guest, and that is, war is politics with guns, and politics is war without guns. And he's absolutely right in echoing that statement. Now, I did have a chance to take a look at the Millennium Challenge that took place, and yes, Iran did win every single time that there was a simulation run. And in fact, in the original one that took place, the entire U.S. Naval force was destroyed within 3 days of that simulation, having U.S. ships sent into the Strait of Hormuz, or at least into the Persian Gulf, and they were destroyed within 3 days. Upwards, they said they estimated casualties of about 20,000. By comparison, 60 some odd thousand died during the Vietnam War. So we're talking about 20,000 in 3 days. That's a very high number. But specifically to the events that are unfolding in front of us right now, it's not like Iran didn't tell them this was coming. The U.S. has had several days to prepare for this kind of retaliation. The United States knowingly and deliberately provoked this attack. The one thing that keeps going over in my mind when I think about this whole situation is that none of this had to happen. None of this was necessary. We had a JCPOA. There was an agreement that everybody was living up to. For the most part, the U.S. wasn't fully living up to the JCPOA, but it was stable nonetheless. And then Donald Trump became elected. He didn't like what his predecessor did, felt that he could get a better deal. He pulled out of it, made new demands that were simply ridiculous, then accused Iran of violating the agreement right and left, using Israel to come up with falsified evidence that Iran had violated the nuclear agreement, going so far as to show the photo of the now famous carpet cleaning business where the supposed nuclear base is. And then after that, once that didn't work, more sanctions were placed on the country, and then attacks on oil tankers were carried out, blamed on Iran with zero evidence to back them up whatsoever. The Yemenis attacked the oil industry inside of Saudi Arabia, and again, Iran was blamed for it with zero evidence. The United States has gone through absolutely everything that they could do to destabilize and destroy Iran short of an actual war. They'd done everything, and nothing worked, and Iran was still continuing to grow, still continuing to be prosperous, despite all the difficulties that have been placed on it by the United States. The only thing left for the U.S. to do was to do something like assassinate Soleimani. They didn't have anywhere else to go. They had already justified spending the now famous $2 trillion on the U.S. war machine to try to counter Iran's growing influence in the region. And this was the inevitable result of empire. The empire has to do this. It's not going to do anything else. This is what it does. But the real shame here is that, there was a relative stability that people could live with. But they chose to throw that away when they assassinated Soleimani. They had to just cross that line and set the entire world on this course right now. And of course, Iran had to retaliate. Iran didn't have any choice. It would have to. It can't take something like that without retaliating. And as soon as the relative mourning for Suleiman is not over yet, but when the bulk of it was over, they launched these strikes and launched two strikes while the United States was sitting there, pretty, declaring Iran wouldn't do anything. They didn't have the guts to do it, but here it is. We're looking at it right now, a severe strike on the United States. And the last reports I saw, helicopters are bringing the bodies of dead U.S. soldiers and injured U.S. soldiers out of that air base right now. And this is all on the head of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. But as you said, and let me just, by the way, update our viewers on the situation. Want you to give us your thoughts as to what that means. Does that mean that there haven't been heavy casualties inflicted on the U.S. that has made him happy? Or do you think right now perhaps he's happy because he has what he has been looking for, and that is Iran, basically famously over the past days, said by some analysts, is taking the bait?
Well, this is incredibly vague. He's not really saying much of anything, and I think that might possibly be deliberate. That way, his base can feel free to interpret that however they wish. Now, maybe it's just an act of bluster by him that he had planned this all along and that he has the situation under control and he knows what to do. As a person with absolutely zero knowledge of leadership, let alone, governmental politics, he doesn't know what to do. He has to rely completely on what little of his advisors that are not yes men and what the Pentagon staff have to tell him. He doesn't know anything about war, despite his now famous statements that he knows all about war. He loves war. He said before he was elected. He doesn't know anything. He's completely reliant on the Pentagon officials to tell him what to do. This is an extremely vague statement. It says nothing reassuring to the American public. It says nothing to Iran, anything specific. It's just a nice, completely vague statement that makes it look like he's in control, when frankly he has lost control of the situation. Any claim that the United States has control of the situation is absolutely nonsense. If they did, they would not be here right now. The United States, I guarantee you, Trump does not know what to do, and that the generals are still sitting around deciding what would be worth a response, should they give a response, what should that response be, to what degree it should be. I guarantee you all the big heads are sitting around working their minds off trying to figure out what there is to do. Trump is probably just going to turn around and go back to bed and not pay it any more mind until somebody comes and wakes him up, if the situation escalates, etc. He doesn't know what to do. He's completely lost in this situation. He's just feigning like he knows what to do, just putting on a brave face in the face of everything that's going on right now, the terrible situation that's unfolding that he has caused by, frankly, nothing more than his own blithering incompetence as the leader of a country. And the American people, particularly the people who voted for him, should be absolutely ashamed of what this president has done. When this started happening, I was almost hoping that maybe a general somewhere in the Pentagon would come and remove Trump from office, maybe a quick military coup to get this incompetent, almost madman out of the office so that calmer heads can prevail. But they'll still be imperialists, but at least they'll be imperialists who aren't as irrational as this, threatening something that could turn into a world war. I mean, I don't think it'll turn into a world war, but the potential is definitely there for it. I think that this is what Trump has intended to do with these words. Say very little, but say absolutely nothing, but make it seem like he's said a lot to his base. And I think that's exactly where he's going with this, because he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to do. We saw previously the report that Trump would not address the nation after what has happened. Think about the significance of that. You essentially have a war situation. War is on us right now. The country is at war, and he refuses to talk to the public. I can't think of any precedent of something like that ever happening in U.S. history. Anytime there's a significantly major event, the president at least makes a statement to the public, even if there's not much to that statement, but to say things like, oh, we're ongoing an investigation, we're still looking at options, etc. There's always something that can be said from the Oval Office. But in this case, Trump won't even face the nation. He won't even look his own country in the face and explain what's going on. He won't say what he's doing, what he's thinking. He doesn't even have any words that can try to calm the public, or at least to say even the slightest thing. He is acting in the very full sense refusing to speak to the public, giving this incredibly vague statement. He is acting like an absolute coward because that's exactly what he is. He does not know how to handle the situation. He's in over his head. He's too much of a narcissist to admit it, and that is going to lead the United States down a terrible path, and that's why I think that he made this vague statement and refuses to speak to the public.
Let's go back to Jason Unruhe, political commentator out of Niagara Falls, to get his comments on the latest that was coming in. Twitter, Foreign Minister Zarif of Iran saying that has actually started and concluded its mission, so to speak. I don't have colleagues can put that on once again so that I could read it off the air. It's to anyway, not really sure. Well, there it is. That's Foreign Minister Zarif. Concluded in self-defense under UN Charter. Do you think Foreign Minister Zarif is trying to say that it has started and finished the retaliatory operations?
I believe that that's what he's saying. There is a lines about what is to be done in situations like this. Anything from the Iranian government since the beginning of these hostilities, since the that Iran has followed the rules. It has done everything that is obligated to do by international treaty, by in the UN. Conflict, and that is they have above the border. They've done everything according to the rules in order to essentially remain within honor, to not be in violation. Right and left, and no consequences for them. Act according to international law. The United States is wrong here, etc. And the U.S. is calling for like a de-escalation. Yet when Javad Zarif tried to earlier today to the UN to file a complaint to the UN Security Council, do exactly what is the lawful. The United States doing so. They refused to grant him a visa to go into the UN, and this is a complete violation. Mm-hmm. In fact, I can't. This may have happened in history, but it's not allowed. Obligated them. The process that the United States wanted, creation of the UN, offered to pay a tremendous amount of money into it, and offered. There's no other way of putting if you're preventing someone else from being able to speak. So Iran has repeatedly gone through all the channels, scaled back for the JCPOA according to the actual rules and the actual schedule. They have tried to state the guidelines and the U.S. has sabotaged it every single time. The United States has not played within the rules. The book is. They don't even know where they can't even see the where it is that they're acting, and that's very typical of this. And within international law, and the U.S. has just completely violated it. They felt like it, completely flaunted it, and frankly, that's been typical of them since their nation's founding. And I think this statement certainly does reflect that. Iran will continue and countries and adult processes which they have followed. There are guidelines set down by international regulatory bodies which they have in compliance, while the United States has completely tipped absolute.
Please hold the line for us, please.